Working Cows Podcast, episode 359. This episode is brought to you by the South Dakota Grassland Coalition. This episode is also brought to you by Ranch Right.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag Studios. And this episode is brought to you by the South Dakota Grassland Coalition. If you're in the business of managing livestock, you've probably experienced drought, shortage of time, not enough help, and hefty debt. But facing one or even all of these challenges doesn't have to leave you worrying about how you'll make it through another year. Learn how to increase your stocking rates, extend your grazing season, increase plant diversity, retain moisture in your soil, spend less time and money on weed control, and much more at one of the South Dakota Grassland Coalition's grazing schools. During this 3-day intensive program, area producers along with presenters from state and local agencies combine hands-on activities in the field with classroom-style presentations to walk you through the steps necessary to create a grazing plan that suits your unique operation. Reserve your spot at one of the 3 grazing schools today at sdgrass.org. Really looking forward to conversation today with Logan Pribbeno. We're going to talk to him about the cattle cycle. A big part of their operation is taking advantage of the cattle cycle. The cattle cycle moves fairly predictably. It is a range of years. We're going to talk about that. It does shift from time to time. Factors do affect it, but it is something that happens, and it happens fairly predictably. And they have made a concerted effort to be in a place where they could take advantage of it on their operation. And so we're going to talk to him about the ins and outs of that and kind of some of the lessons learned and some of the things that maybe they do differently. So Logan, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast. Welcome back.
Glad to see you again, Clay.
I have been kind of paying attention, of course. Appreciate you guys being a sponsor of the show and some of those things. And we've been talking about the wine glass easy keepers for the last couple of weeks on the podcast. And you guys have a sale coming up here on Wednesday as this is releasing on Monday. But been kind of paying attention to what you guys are doing from a macro perspective with regards to the cattle cycle. And these are things that, I don't know if we can all predict or point our finger at exactly what butterfly flaps its wings and causes these things, but it tends to be fairly regular, right? I mean, this isn't something that hasn't happened before. You talk about 1973, you talk about, I don't know about others between there and 2014, but 2014 to 2016, and here we are again about 10 years later, it's happening again. So I think there were probably some between 73 and 2014. I think it is kind of about a 10-year deal, but can you talk to me about kind of how you guys think about the cattle cycle there at Wineglass Ranch?
Sure. And the 74 Wade Chody in his book, he wrote that it seems to be about 10 or 11-year cycles. And Alan Nation also wrote that the cattle cycle is the most predictable cycle in the commodities world. So it shifted in Alan Nation's lifetime on that 14 shift. It caught our operation by surprise, but it's certainly easier to kind of predict compared to a lot of these other cycles that tend to come and go.
Sure. And again, from a macro perspective, what would you say it is? What is the cattle cycle? What are some of the things that are indicative of a high or a low in the cattle cycle? How are you guys paying attention to some of those things?
Sure. So just watching the supply, heifer retention is a big one that as a leading indicator. It's amazing when cattlemen are not making money; they're retaining heifers, and the inverse seems to also be true. So that could be a good leading indicator, and just the prices. And it's the live, and this is Alan Nation's idea is just watch the live cattle price. That's the only real price. And you'll notice if you look at the chart from 15, when that feeder cattle market ran up, that live cattle market wasn't. It was kind of a head fake. And one thing that Greg Koenzag on Twitter, he's kind of tuned me into is the cow leads the way. So, cows are bringing like $1.35 right now just for a weigh up cow. And it really seems to be pulling the market, which is that I don't know where Greg learned it, but that's the first time I had heard of it. And it seems to really be the case in particular for the cycle that we're in right now.
And if somebody had time for it, I think that there could be an interesting podcast started that would be entitled, "What Did Logan Post on Twitter This Week?" And because that's usually where I come across what you're talking about, what you're thinking about. And this heifer retention piece is what kind of spurred me to reach out to you and say, hey, let's talk about this. Is that you posted that less heifers were retained again this year than last year. So is that to you an indicator that we're not done yet? That we've got some way to go as far as sustain high prices?
I think so. I'm predicting the market, which is a fool's errand because there are factors completely out of my realm of thinking that come into play. But my thinking is there is some more gas in the tank. Two reasons why. Heifer retention is a 10, or got the chart up here. It's at least a 15-year low for number of heifers retained in 2024. And obviously the heifers retained, they either go to the ranch or they go to the feed yard. So once those heifers go to the ranch and they don't go to the feed yard, you've just eliminated half of your supply to the feed yards, and you generally get another really big uptick when the ranchers start to retain heifers. And something happened in like February where the mood kind of shifted, I think, in the ranch world, and ranchers got more serious about retaining heifers. We were buying heifers through the fall and early winter, and I couldn't believe that I was able to buy a really nice Baldy replacement heifer for oftentimes $1,400 a pop for a 550 pound animal. Wow. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Now those 7 weights are bringing close to 2,000. And I saw some really nice F1 crosses. They brought like 2,200 last week. So I do think that we might be getting into the heifer retention side, which should limit the supply of feeder cattle going forward for the next year or two.
Yeah, and ultimately it seems like this strategy is kind of about doing what other people aren't doing right now. Nobody's doing this, so we're going to do that so that we're ready to do, to offload or whatever when they're ready to buy. That's kind of how the market works, right? Supply and demand, and we want to have the supply when the demand is there. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
That's exactly what we tried to do. Is we're going to disperse our cow herd here. In 2025 and 2026, probably be a sale over 2 years, and just go back into stockers. And we were mostly stockers up until 2019 when we grew, and we've done it a few times. My dad has done it a few times on a different scale, but it is something that we try to do and haven't always got it right. But we're in the game and playing, and it's hard to hit the top, but sure fun to try, I guess.
Yeah. And you mentioned being mostly stockers, and we talked about that before on the podcast as well, but being mostly stockers, making this transition into cow-calf, and that transition was specifically for this moment, right? That was about 5 years of building a cow herd so that you could be ready for the height of the cattle market.
Yeah, that's correct. When we first talked, Clay, or met, we were mostly stalkers, and in 2019 and 2020 we got really, really earnest about building the cow herd, and bought some very nice heifers off the ranch from a number of places for we're buying for $700-800 a pop. People thought I was crazy for buying them and breeding them, but it seems to be working so far. It 2023 was a really nice year to have a big cow herd and not necessarily a bunch of steers.
Yeah, for sure. And so, how are you? I mean, this seems like we'll be honest or upfront, seems like a fairly dangerous game. Like can go wrong. Like you said, don't know. As I said recently, somewhat provocatively, when a corruptocrat and a tyrant get into a peeing contest somewhere in Eastern Europe, things get affected in American agriculture too. And so, how do we let's be real about some of those things and tell me about how you're mitigating some of that risk.
Sure. Robert Kiyosaki, he wrote, I know many rich men that have lost a lot, and I know many poor men who have never lost a dime. I'll be honest with you, 2014 caught us flat-footed. The cattle cycle shifted. We had liquidated cows prior to that. We had it was a bad year for Wineglass Ranch, which was very unfortunate because it was the best year for most ranches, but we were very ill equipped for it. So don't think that we get it right all the time. That was a case where it shifted on us and we weren't right. I'd only been back on the ranch for 2 years, and this whole thing, like in 2014 and 2016, I sat down and I was like, man, we really needed to get it right this time, having missed out that. And I took it very personally, and I hatched this plan with the help of my father, Allen Nation, and Bud Williams and 1,000 people. But me and my dad sat down and we're like, man, when is this thing going to happen again? And how can we kind of prepare ourselves? And So 2014 was a good example where we didn't get it right. We had liquidated prior to that, and we're in a poor position to capitalize on it. So hoping to get it right this time, and so far so good. It's looking good. I know the market's a little bit down, but we're still at record highs. Yep.
And so the question was, how do you mitigate risk? And the answer was, I know a lot of rich men who've lost a lot. So I want to make sure there isn't more to that answer as far as mitigating risk before we move on.
Sure. So mitigating risk. I'll tell you, one of the, when you do build your cow herd, what I'm learning firsthand, it's a real cash flow killer. If you're a stocker operator that's used to high turnover, that high turnover is really nice from a cash flow management. But man, when you do build that cow herd, it is a cash flow killer. So it is concerning. How do we mitigate risk? Well, the number one thing was, I bought these heifers for $700 a pop. So I have more into their development. We sold the opens at a profit. It's a cash flow consideration, which I have a very good banker that is in tune and knows exactly what we're doing. So there's cash flow risk, but my basis on these things are minimal. So it's not like I went out last year and bought, $2,200 bred cows, and I'm trying to sell them for a profit. We got them bought right, and that's a term from the stocker. It's like the buy sell, or the sell buy. We got them bought right, and because we did that, we don't have a lot of risk in them. So I don't have any mitigating risk for the cow herd. Now I do have a lot of LRP. We still do run a lot of stockers as well. Carry everything over as a yearling. We're still buying stockers, running them on different places here in Wyoming, and I've got a lot of LRP in at a low level, just as a black swan protection event. It doesn't lock in a really nice profit margin, but it sure protects us if we were to have something like a COVID or if this avian flu thing turns out to be, real bad, it just a bankruptcy protection floor is what we've got with the LRP program.
You sat down with your dad, 2014, 2016, somewhere in that range, and said, let's be prepared next time. And did you kind of have a range of years in mind? Like, okay, we've got this many witnesses saying it's 10, 11 years. Let's be ready in 2014 or 2024, 2025, 2026. Is that kind of how you guys were thinking about it back then?
Yeah, in fact, we had a model, and 2027 was our proposed date when we sat down in 2016 and wrote it down. That has changed. It seems to be coming a little bit faster than we had thought, and so we edit it and talk about it, very frequently. It's a big part of what we do, and we wrote it down and have changed it every year. It's looking, we'll be selling cows in 2025 and 2026 as of right now. But Harlan Hughes wrote in 2019 that a heifer born in 2020, bred in 2021 to calve in 2022 will be the most profitable cow in this cycle. And that was another good indicator for me. Harlan Hughes used to write for the Stockman Grass Farmer and then Beef Magazine. And he is really in tune with the cycle. And he's one of those guys that I really pay attention to try to fine tune that 9 to 11 year window.
Yeah. And he's North Dakota, right? He was out of North Dakota. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the strategy as far as getting them bought. Is it kind of go out, find them at the right price, take all of them I can get at that price? Is that how you were approaching it? You weren't really being choosy about what you were buying. Outside of it's a beef, a beef breed in a sense.
Yeah, we're a little choosy. In where we buy, we buy out of Wyoming, Colorado, and Nebraska exclusively. Like to buy big loads off of ranches that haven't been picked through for replacements. Price is very important. So I don't get crazy chasing, replacement grade females because we do have a home raised bull program, and we buy bulls that fit our program, and we use Burke Teichard's heifer development model, which is expose them for 21 days. They're not ever on feed. They're always out grazing. So it's a pretty rough system. Of all those that we buy, about half of them enter our cow herd, and we expose them to our home raised bulls and other bulls that we buy that fit that type, that grazing type, and their progeny. So when we go to sell cows, they'll be mostly single iron home raised, mostly because of when we started that build. So they should be really good cows, despite the fact that we did have to buy a lot of heifers to kind of upstart it. They should be have enough of our genetics in them, our range cow easy keeper genetics, that they should be pretty good cows.
Yeah, and so you mentioned earlier that you figure that it was a little early, that you guys had picked 2027 as the date, and that there was a range of years, and you wanted to be ready in time for that range of years to hit. I would guess that probably the drought is part of what moved that date up, because the cow herd got liquidated at that time. Is that your sense of it as well?
Yeah, drought really accelerates it, because you really need cow numbers to go down drastically to kickstart this thing. And I think that the drought certainly kicked this cycle into gear. Yeah.
You mentioned the wine glass easy keepers selling April 10th, as I said, Wednesday after this is released, at Oglala Livestock. There'll be a link in the show notes page. You can go find it there. But one of the things that kind of stuck out to me as I was thinking about this is, well, if somebody else was thinking, hey, this is a strategy, it's one that maybe we've got the resource base to do. We've got the management flexibility to do it where we're at. I think we might look at doing something like this. Those cows would be good cows to bring into the herd, because for one reason that occurs to me is that they're not going to break you. They're low input foraging experts that aren't going to put you under trying to feed them until you can get that calf, as Harlan Hughes said, born in 2019, bred, to calve in 2023. That's the most profitable animal. So if you're trying to get that animal, you want to have the right cow to get there. And so it seems to me that maybe those low input foraging experts, the wine glass easy keepers, would be a good fit for that if somebody was looking to do it.
Yeah, I talked to a guy. We're running advertisements, so I've been on the phone quite a bit, and talked to a guy who was smart enough to sell all of his hard keeping cows that need alfalfa in a feed truck 6 months out of the year to survive. And most people aren't that smart. Most people are like, oh, I want to keep the cow herd. I'm going to start buying bulls that are right, and I'll get there in 5 or 6 years. But you can sell those hard keeping cows for pretty penny, because they're normally pretty big and black and beautiful and in the sale ring. But yeah, our cows have never seen a feed truck, and very rarely get hay. We feed a little bit of the hay to our first calf heifers when we calve them out, but they graze every day of the year, including last winter. All of my neighbors had their cows locked up on full feed, and ours were out laying in a snowbank somewhere, but they survived.
Yeah,
they're old tough critters. My dad did it. I got to give my dad, and also TJ Ellicott, who is our cow boss. I'm a steer man myself, to be completely frank. I feel more comfortable just running yearlings. But my dad never chased the trends in the 80s. Just kept with the British Hereford Angus cross, and then TJ Ellicott, our cow boss, he has a very similar philosophy of my father for these grazing genetics, and they work very well together to keep the cow herd as it is. As a steer man, given I would screw it up with some terminal crosses and stuff like that, but I've kept my dad's program, and with the help of TJ, I've kept my dad's program the way that he intended.
Well, and that's the benefit of having a guy like TJ around, is you've got somebody who really likes it, right? Where you're a steer man, even though I think you've called steers prima donnas before and said that they need to be
a heifer man might be the better way.
Yeah. So, but having a guy like TJ around who's actually passionate about it and wants to pour over the spreadsheets, wants to look over, the different strategies and think about these things, and then bring in a proposal, and when your excitement about it too, to say, yeah, this is worth the investment of our resources to do it. So I think that's an important piece of this. For sure.
He does all of our bull acquisition, and he runs our home raise program too. And we were talking yesterday, and he asked me, he's like, "Did you watch the video on this bull?" And I'm like, TJ, I haven't spent 15 minutes of my life thinking about bulls. That's what I've got you for.
Yeah, that does lead me to another question. How do you sleep at night? Not from a just from the perspective of, there's a lot of, I don't know if risk is the right word, but there's a lot going on here. How do you handle those things, the stress of it? Or maybe that's an indication that this isn't the strategy for somebody if they're going to struggle to sleep at night during the process, because it's a long process.
It is a long process. I'll tell you, everything's been lining up pretty good. So I've been sleeping at night. It's those years that are tight that you end up out there working. And, this last year has been a really nice one. I've been able to take a lot of time with my family. I've got 2 daughters, 6 and 8. My wife left her job 2 years ago and to join the ranch full time. That was a big household change for us, and very positive. I'm pretty comfortable with risk. I sleep just fine at night. Maybe I'm just wired a little bit different.
Yeah, I sleep well in our house, and this is totally facetious. Tongue firmly planted in cheek. If it was farther in there, it'd be bleeding. But I always tell my wife I sleep so well because I have such a clean conscience. But she knows otherwise.
Yeah, but. And Clay, I like I said, we screwed up in 14. Seldom get it perfect. and good things came from that. Really good things came from that. It wasn't a good year for us, and it helped a lot. My character, my person, became a Christian in 2015 as a result of, I think, everything that happened in like 2014. Things didn't go right, and sometimes when things don't go right, it's just the way it's supposed to be, and it's fine. And even if even if it doesn't go well, you know what, it's going to be fine, Clay. I'm really not too worried about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting that stool kicked out from under you sometimes the best thing that can happen, right?
Yeah. Hopefully not 2 times in 10 years, but
Yeah. Yeah.
if
But I
that's the
mean,
way it is, I'm ready to buck.
yeah, the leadership cliche would be that you learn more from failure than you do from success, right?
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Ranch Right.
Does a year's worth of tax prep stand between you and being able to send things to your accountant? Are you tired of email after email asking for documents that you don't know how to find? Are you wondering exactly how much money you're going to owe the IRS this year and have no clue how to even start to figure that out? We've been there, but you don't have to. Hire Ranch Right today and know where your business stands. After all, taxes are a part of life, but Ranch Right helps you with data entry, bookkeeping, gives you reports that you can make sense of, and helps with a realistic outlook of what your business needs this tax season. Visit www.ranchright.llc today and cross tax prep off your list.
So talk me through we've talked and just now talked about some of the negative lessons learned in 2014. Talk to me about some of the lessons you've learned through the process of building up to this. You said your dad had done it before at different times. So I imagine he was a mentor in this, and then Alan Nation and others you've mentioned, Bud Williams, but talk me through some of the lessons that you've learned, some of the things that maybe say we're going to do this again in 2037 or whatever. Talk to me about some of the things maybe you do differently, some of the things you definitely do again.
We were stalker operators, and we had a pile of heifers here, and it seemed like this thing was going to come early in about 2020 with the COVID market, and we were buying them cheap, and made the rash decision to expose a lot more heifers that year, to get them on there quicker, and ended up being the right decision. One thing I would say is to do this well, and let me back up and just say that Knowledge Rich Ranching is literally a playbook for this. So if you're more interested in it, I would read that. Some things have changed since then, including the dates and whatnot. But anyway, you really got to be 4 years ahead of this thing to get it right. Last year was a good year, and you see people kind of sniffing at the cattle market, being like, "Do I need to enter this?" And there are people that are doing that, buying bred heifers, and they're going to get slaughtered. Probably, I don't know, but most of the time that they do, it's tough to enter it right now. So you really need to be about 4 years ahead of this thing, and also it takes 3 or 4 years to just figure this thing out. So it actually takes 10. You tell people 3 and 4, because if you tell them 10, they won't believe you. But you just you got to be in the game long term, and you need to position yourself business wise so you can play this game for decades and not years here and there.
Right. And as far as the nuts and bolts of your strategy, exposing heifers, challenging them with a short breeding season, low bull percentage, all those things, those are things that you would do. Those are things you would, that have worked for you. It doesn't necessarily all have to be an in-house program, as if you're buying them right. There's opportunities there. But I mean, those are all things you'd do again. Those are things that have been working well.
I would buy heifers a lot. Next time we do this, I'll buy heifers a lot better. I learned a lot about, and I was buying those, and I didn't have TJ here. He came on board in 2019, and we as a team, we're going to buy them a lot better next time. Put it that way. And What else have we learned? What I've learned is Bert Teichert is brilliant. He came in 2016 to help us with a host of things, and really helped us refine our heifer development program, and where you really just rough them and don't worry about weights. You rough them, put the bulls in for one cycle, and then you sell your opens for a handsome profit, and that has been awesome. If we did one thing right this time around, it was going to Bert Teichert development program, where you just don't worry about weights, don't worry about anything. You turn the bulls in, sell the opens at a handsome profit. And since Bert has come and kind of taught us that, those heifers have been our number one enterprise every year, because when you get the breds that are good, that are going to stay in the cow herd, and then those opens, when we sell them at the same sale every year, and they just bring buku bucks. And then that's the one thing I guess we got right this time.
Yeah, for sure. And the cycle is that you will go back to being a predominantly stocker operation in the next couple of years. That's the idea?
Yeah, and we'll still have a cow herd. So we'll sell them at Ogallala. We're going to keep the old cows, keep the heifer calves, and Ogallala is going to come here and sort them, and they're going to do their famous Ogallala sort, which they're only going to take 70-80%. So we'll still have a fairly sizable cow herd. TJ is actually looking forward to running the sort offs, because it's going to be the Herefords and the horns, and the spots and the socks, and it's just going to be a beautiful cow herd that, and we'll keep our core genetics, but we'll have a cow herd, and it will be, of size, but we'll go back into buying stockers, probably steers. When you ride this thing down, a big black steer that's hedged is a great tool to ride this cycle down. And that's one thing that we did pretty well last time was write it down, and we got the top all wrong, messed it up. But when we were writing that thing down, even when COVID hit, and we wrote it down really well. And big black steers are a great way to mitigate risk on the way down.
Yeah, and you talk about the kind of what the herd will look like. Tell me a little bit more about the famous Ogallala sort. I haven't heard that term before.
Oh, you haven't? Ogallala is the biggest barn in Nebraska by a long shot, and they've earned themselves a reputation for a particular type of sort that they will sort on them more than any other barn. So they're very particular, and so it's a really nice barn to buy out of, and in particular because of that. And locally, cattle buyers and everything, the Ogallala sort means you go through them and comb them, basically.
Gotcha. Okay. And also you mentioned that what will be left is going to be a fairly an eclectic herd. We might call it a menagerie, depending on who you're talking to. And that is similar to what the bull herd looks like too, the bull battery. Is that right?
Yeah, you're right. You saw our bull battery. It's not big and black out there. It's all heterosis. Again, Bert Teichert really helped us with our home raised bull program and what to select for, and it's all crossbred bulls. We really like the black baldies, particular to them, but it's a menage out there for sure.
Yeah, and you like to run those eclectic herds in the bull battery looking like it does right up against the road to get questions out of the neighborhood. Is that?
In fact, our bull battery is literally on the highway right now. Our neighbors are, they think we're nuts, and they're probably right.
Yep. Depends on what you're in the business to do. It depends on what you're in the business to do. I think the first time we talked, Logan, the title of the episode was "That Won't Work Here." So I think you said you were going to change the title of your job description to "That Won't CEO of That Won't Work Here LLC" or something like that. So,
You're right.
Yeah. So another important piece of this is, what do you do when you're not building the cow herd? And you talked a little bit about that, riding it down, big black steers hedged. is a great animal. Talk to me about why that is and some of those ideas.
Sure. Well, a stock operator in general, and this is Allen Nation, just to give credit here. The stock operators make the most money when that spread between the calf and feeder cattle is very tight, and when the markets are explosive to the top end, it's way more favorable for the cowman. So as those shrink, your value of gain increases. And as the supply becomes greater, feed yards can become more selective and picky. The opposite of where we are right now, where they cannot be as selective and as picky. And when they are selective, they prefer to feed a steer. They prefer it to be big, and they prefer it to be black, and they prefer it to be northern. And so we do try to get big, black, northern steers, buy them out of Montana, Wyoming, and run them here because they're more choosy when it's down, and when it's up, it's the opposite. They'll go and buy calves, they'll go buy heifers, they'll go buy whatever they have to kind of maintain their numbers.
And part of that is you guys are picking up some positive basis coming out of those areas too, right? They're getting closer to where they're going to end up, and that is a help for you when you start buying calves out of the north, right?
That's correct. And I think that's unique to Western Nebraska in that, you truck them in to feed yard country, and you do capture some basis out of the Mountain West when you do that. If you live in closer to Missouri, there's another way to capture value. That's the nice thing about Western Nebraska is you capture value to get to have those nice cattle out of the Mountain West, and they're fun to run. I do enjoy a nice Wyoming, big black Wyoming steer running out on cover crops here in Nebraska.
Yeah. So a few times you've mentioned Allen Nation, Knowledge Rich Ranching. It'll be linked in the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/359. It is on the resources page. I think it's been on the resources page since day one of the Working Cows podcast. Though it does illustrate where my head was at when I created the resources page, that paddock shift is above Knowledge Rich Ranching. And that's just because I was a grazing zealot then and not a profitability and ranching leadership thinking zealot.
I like that. Yeah.
We all start there, right?
Yeah.
We all start grazing, and then we realize, oh, this is a business as well, and the grazing is fun, but the business part is crucial.
Yeah. You can be a great grazer and be losing money. That's for sure.
I came to this conclusion. Being on somebody else's podcast is always a good thing. It challenges you to think a little bit about how you're going to say things. And I came to this conclusion, and I ran it by a couple of guys who I think know if this is a crazy thought. One of them was Dallas Mount, and the other one was John Haskell. I said, it's easier to out-business a bad grazing plan than it is to outgraze a bad business plan.
That's a very good way to put it, and very astute. There's 1,000 ways to say it. Also, like on the stalker side, you can have a 2.0 average daily gain on grass, 0% death loss, and lose money. So you really got to have your business hat on in the cattle industry in particular, because it is cutthroat and designed to clean a lot of people out. So make sure you got your business hat on. That's for sure.
Yep. Any other thoughts on the market going down, on what we're doing once we've liquidated this herd, and kind of the strategy and the way we're thinking about it, and when you'll start rebuilding that herd and how you'll do it?
I've looked at more charts in the last 6 months than I think I have in like the last 6 years, just trying to read the tea leaves. I don't think it's done any good, but I'm sure I spent a lot of time in the office and on my patio just trying to think and time this thing. And then you get, this recent downturn with the dairy cow thing. I mean, it's a wild ride, but it sure is. It's enjoyable.
Yeah. What have been some of your best resources? I mean, we've mentioned Allen's books and books specifically a few times, but some of those important charts, some of those important reports and resources that you really can keep an eye on?
Right when we kicked it off, I said there are two charts in particular why I'm optimistic. I mentioned the heifer retention. The other one is cattle supply outside of feed yards is currently, again, at least a 15-year low. And so I've been watching that. So cattle supply outside of feed yards at a substantial low, and at least a 10 or 15-year low. And then you have the heifer retention. I just can't help but think that there is some fireworks to be had yet. So I do in particular watch those. I do really like cattle facts. I know it's not sophisticated, and I am not a sophisticated trader. I'm not a very good trader even. I keep it simple, keep it very simple. So I do like cattle facts because they're really just pretty macro, and I don't need to know what's happening this week or this month, but the cattle facts just tries to get where we are in the cycle. And I think they do a really nice job of knowing where we are and just keeping it really simple for simpletons, like me. So that is one of my main resources to see where we are in the cycle.
As we prepared to start talking, you said that you didn't want to talk about what things would do this week or next week, but wanted to keep it pretty macro. And I think that's probably a lesson just in general, right? I mean, being driven by what's happening today and next week is probably a way to get scared out of or chased off of a strategy that could potentially net pretty important results for Wineglass going forward, right?
We are like a bigger ship, I guess, and it's really hard for us to capitalize on weekly and monthly trends. It's we can turn the ship, but it takes quite an effort. So we tend to just focus on the macros because of that. If it was just me and my wife and a grow yard out here and a pasture, I think we could manage it a little bit different, but it's not what we're tasked with.
What you're talking about there is the fast eat the slow, right? That there's an opportunity for the smaller guys to make bigger percentage-wise, bigger changes in their operation on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis and capitalize on some of those shifts in the market. But then there's also this bigger macro, like long-term, we're looking at this strategy and we're going to be able to make this is a big lever, right? We can really move a big boulder with this lever. And I'm always hesitant to ask people about numbers and specifics. But could you give me a sense of like how important this strategy is for business success at Wineglass Ranch? Like, I don't know if there's a way to communicate that without talking about specifics, but
yeah, it's critical. We, like every other ranch I know, we do not have a paid off land base and a paid off cow herd. And, everyone thinks that everyone else does. I always ask, I've visited 100 or 200 ranches in my life. It's been one of my strategic advantages. Good network, great people out there. That's one of the joys of being in the ranching industry is the people. And I haven't always been in it. So I fully appreciate it. And we are not a fully paid off land and cattle company. I think those are a myth by and large also, but it is important. And this one in particular is important. My parents are turning 70 this year. So this cow sale is going to be to kind of transition them into more of a retirement and also start the land transfer. So my wife and I own the operating company wholly, and we just lease the land and cattle from my parents. So this will start that transition onto generation 5. And I'm going to go back into Allen Nation on this. There's no animal that appreciates during this cycle more than a cow. So you can make more money buying and selling cows than you can any other class of animal, only at certain times. And this is probably going to be one of those times. So if you're looking to maximize profit, buying and selling a cow at the right time is going to offer the highest return consistently, decade after decade. But you just got to be impeccable on your timing.
And You mentioned that the myth of the paid off cow herd and paid off land ranch. I would guess that part of that is because even the successful ones, even the ones that are doing it well, or maybe even especially the ones that are doing it well, view debt as a tool, right?
That's exactly right. I don't anticipate being one of those, even given the opportunity. So debt is a tool for for profitable businesses. Debt is a very useful tool, especially if you got, long-term debt tied in at, 3%. I mean, that's an asset, really.
Why
would you pay that off? It'd be silly.
You're maybe this is the wrong way to think about it, but it occurs to me that when your debt interest rate is lower than the inflation, you're making money.
Yeah, especially if it's backed by, something like dirt.
Right.
That seems to just be spiraling higher and higher.
Right. Yep. Very good. Again, really appreciate your time today. Again, linked in the show notes page today, workingcows.net/359. We'll have a link to wineglassranchinc.com where people can go and watch the video and find the relevant links to jump on the sale. Wednesday, April 10th, Oglala Livestock, Oglala, Nebraska. Last thing, any advice? And I think we've been trying to give advice here, but just some advice, some things that you would say if you're wanting to pursue this strategy. Here's what I would say. Here are a couple things that you should really pay attention to.
I've got the perfect advice, and this comes from Allen Nation and the Bible. So, two very good sources, and it is write it down. So, and I might mispronounce it, but it's Habakkuk 2:2-3. I'm going to read the King James version.
Perfect.
And this came to me from reading Allen Nation, but you just got to write it down. We wouldn't have been in this position if we would not have written down our plan. So, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon the tablets, that he may run and readeth. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. So so few people are willing to write down their life goals or their life plans, and it really is a shame. I think it's less than 5% of the population has goals written at all. And if you think you're smarter than Allen Nation or the Bible, go ahead. Don't write anything down. But if you want to take some advice from those two sources, write it down, make a plan. Where are you going to be in 2034? Are you going to have some cows to sell? Because I'm pretty confident that it'll be an opportunity.
Yeah. The secret to pronouncing Old Testament names is to say it loud and fast, and everybody will think you know what you're talking about. So
good advice for a preacher.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. Yeah, I love that verse. Another one that comes to mind, where there is no vision, the people perish. Jim Mathis, who has led the renovation, as I understand it, of Wyotech in Laramie, was in my High Plains Ranch Practicum class, the High Plains Ranch Practicum class that my wife and I were a part of. And he stood up and read that verse at the end of the class. He said, where there is no vision, the people perish. And, him having things written down, having vision, knowing where he's going has been a part of his success. You guys having things written down, knowing where you're going has been crucial to your success. So, I think pretty good advice. Very, can't get better. Actually, can't get better than that. So very good. I really appreciate your time today, Logan. Thank you again for joining me on the Working Cows podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Clay. Appreciate it always.
Very good stuff there with Logan. Really appreciate his time. Really appreciate his advice there at the end. Can't overstate that enough, obviously. Very much looking forward to next week on the Working Cows podcast. April 15th, tax day. We're going to talk to John Haskell of Ranch Right about how do you manage tax burden? How do you mitigate the taxes? So yes, we know that if we're successful, we're going to pay some taxes, but there are ways to go about making sure that we don't pay more than we need to, right? And so we're going to talk to John about some strategies, all above board all above board strategies for mitigating that tax burden on your operation. We'll be talking to him on the next episode of the Working Cows podcast. We will see you again real soon.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.